The EFINA Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the EFINA Podcast series. My name is Emmanuel Umukoro, and I'll be taking you on an interesting conversation today. Before I introduce my guest, let me first say here that what we're going to discuss today really is a call to action, prompting the regulators to actually address certain issues that have plagued the ecosystem for a very long time. The EFINA Podcast is a series of conversations that are tailored to provoking actions within the ecosystem. And when I say actions, I mean positive actions. We discuss critical issues that are so germane that if we don't address them, we won't make the significant progress that we all desired within the financial service ecosystem. Once more, welcome to the EFINA Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be discussing an interesting topic which we have called protecting invisible and vulnerable people in Nigeria's financial service ecosystem. What regulators must do. Between 2019 and 2022, there was a 207% growth in fraud cases that were reported. Only 2024, NIPS reported 52.26 billion naira loss to fraud. And that was a 197% growth between 2019 and 2024. That tells you the magnitude of fraud that is committed. And this figure do not actually capture the people who do not come and report, in mainstream platforms. And we call them invisible victims. They are invisible because some of them are too shy to come and tell their stories, or they do not have the platforms that are designed to report fraud cases. And we are asking the questions. If we were to build an inclusive financial service ecosystem that includes everybody, these people must also be part of the conversation. So how do we protect them? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the EFINA Podcast. Let me introduce my guest. Someone that you already know, if I mention the name. But before I let the cat out of the bag, you will have heard of the term consumer mama, right? In 2016, specifically in March, if I remember correctly, there was a no banking day, that was declared. And she led that conversation just to address some of the mainstream and deep-rooted issues that affect consumers within the financial service ecosystem. She's no other person than Mrs. Sola Salako-Ajulo.
Thank you,
Consumer Mama, you're
Thank
welcome
you very
to the
much,
podcast.
Manuel. It's a great honor to be here. And hello to all our viewers and listeners.
Okay, awesome. Let me start by asking you, why no banking day?
No banking day came out of sheer frustration, actually.
Okay.
Because around that 2016, there was a whole lot of activity going on in the banking industry. They were trying to balance out in terms of which banks will survive and which ones won't. And Central Bank just kind of rolled out a whole lot of series of unexplainable bank charges that, we've been grumbling about it for a few years, but it came to a hilt in 2016. We had to pay 100 naira for card maintenance every year. We had to pay monthly account maintenance fees when we were just supposed to be going out of COT. COT was supposed to expire, and then Central Bank just introduced this maintenance fees. We were paying to withdraw a certain amount of money. If you're going to withdraw any amount of money out of your account, even on ATM, we're being charged if we withdrew something across the counter, or if every ATM you were paying 20 naira, 50 naira for every 20 naira. I don't know. It was just a potpourri of it. And we had tried to engage. We had tried to bring that notice to regulators and even the service providers. Every time we talk to service providers, they say Central Bank gave us the directive to do this. So we thought, okay, what can we do that would impact the bottom line of that sector, which will force even the regulators to have to look at for it. And that's how we thought, let's mobilize consumers to at least avoid using that service for just one day. Because I know that they make money daily. So if one day we could reduce the number of people who went in to transact business, it will show in their bottom line. True. And that would force them to have to look out for it. And that's how we gained a lot of momentum. Quite a lot of Nigerians got on it, but we didn't have enough time to do real mass awareness.
Yeah.
But because we got a lot of public attention, even global attention, because continental TV stations were coming to talk to us about why. Because apparently this is a problem that's not just localized to Nigeria.
Yeah.
Everybody else is feeling the pinch. Why would I put money in a bank and the bank is constantly charging me? What services am I getting from the bank that much that I should pay so much? So that's why we came up with No Banking Day. And it was relatively successful.
Yeah.
I mean, some people didn't hear about it, so they still went to the bank. But when we checked some banks in our own area in Ikeja that day, the whole banking halls were empty.
But I think also what's important also is to say that even for people who didn't hear about it, it was documented, right? And it's part of history. And I think it's giving birth to new conversations today around the ecosystem. Just building on that, I know you didn't do that for the elites alone, right? I think it was because of the issues charges. Most elites could pay those and they wouldn't even complain.
You'll be surprised.
Really?
Yes, because some of those charges were done in such a way that the volume of business you do determines how much you pay. So even for the well-off, they were looking at them paying account maintenance charges that could run into hundreds of thousands, depending on what kind of volume.
Business, yeah.
So it affected everybody. You know what now happened? I mean, that one didn't get as much attention. The year after, we launched the Close 1 Million Bank Accounts campaign, because we found out that a whole lot of Nigerians have multiple accounts that they are not using.
True.
And the banks will not close your account for you, because as long as that account is on their books, it adds to their numbers. And anytime they need to charge those maintenance fees, they will just charge those accounts, even when you are not using them. So I thought, okay, let's help Nigerians take steps. And many people went to their banks to say they wanted to close their account. The banks refused to close it. That was really interesting.
Yeah. Let's flip it to the regulators side, right? I'm just thinking, why will a customer be denied? I want to close, and I've experienced it. I've gone to a bank. I wanted to close my account because I felt I was wrongfully treated, and they made the process a bit cumbersome, right?
Deliberately.
Okay, so is there any regulation that says you can't close your account? Where does regulation stand in this?
Sincerely, there are no regulations that say you can't close your account. Even as a consumer, you have a right to decide where you want to. It's your right to choose.
Yeah.
You have a right to decide who you want to do business with and who you don't want to do business with. So these are the gray areas in the Nigerian financial sector. There's nothing that says you cannot close your account, but banks make it very much cumbersome, just like you said. They make it tedious for you so that you don't close your account, because I think there's some kind of data that they use to gain something by the number of accounts that is open on their books. I walked into a bank one day, trying to close my account. I thought, why do I have so many accounts in them? They brought out a long sheet. I had over 50 accounts in my name.
Did you deliberately open those accounts?
No, they were, maybe for instance, you wanted to do a fixed deposit.
Yeah.
They will open the account for that fixed deposit. Once you withdraw the money, instead of closing that account, it stays there. If I now come back again, I want to do another fixed deposit, they open a fresh account.
Which was not supposed to be anyway.
That I had over 50-something bank accounts in my name. I went to the bank to check. So I didn't know where to start. Which one? How do we start closing this? And so it's still there. So there's something, I don't know yet, but there's some kind of data that the banks generate that gives them some benefit by the number of accounts they have opened in their system. So that's probably why they don't do it.
Let me take this conversation a bit further. You knew because you were informed. You could go and ask, right? But there are many Nigerians who don't even have this knowledge. And we've been calling them invisible, right? Beyond the fact that they lack the adequate knowledge and awareness, what else will make a Nigerian that is within the financial service ecosystem to become invisible when it comes to fraud and consumer protection?
Well, I think the first thing from my experience, and I've had like 2 to 3 decades in this consumer protection ecosystem, I think the first thing is probably because there is a lack of trust in the system. If, for instance, I a consumer is hit by any fraud and quack, the first thing you want to do is go to the bank to say, this has happened to me.
Sure.
But because when they get to the bank, there's no structures to help them. There are no processes that can help to ensure that they get redress. They lose confidence in that system and they don't trust the system. So they would rather stay away. When you tell people, have you reported to your bank? Say, I called them, but they didn't do anything. And because they didn't do anything, the next time any such thing happens to me again, I'm not going to call them because they didn't do anything the first time.
True.
So that's that. Then there's the issue of shame. I mean, a whole lot of people feel that people would shame them if they say, I've been hit by fraud. They say, especially on social media, people start abusing you. How did you, are you that stupid or something or the other? So because people don't want to be seen as ignorant or stupid, they would keep the conversation, the experience to themselves, So there are various personal reasons why people do that, but I think systemic reason is because we have not built enough confidence in the consumer that the structures for redress will deliver for them. Mm-hmm. So because the structures don't deliver for them, they would not bother to go and try it.
You brought it home by encapsulating it as a systemic, issue, right? And that has to do with systems in place that address these systemic issues. For these victims, whether they are low income, whether they are elderly, they live in remote communities that are far from mainstream banks and all of that, how do we make their voices heard?
It's still a systemic issue. If the system can work at putting structures to address that lack of trust, because for whatever it's worth, wherever they may live, there was a place where they opened their account.
True.
If there is a way in which we put structures in place that if they go back to that place where they opened their account, there are actions that can be taken to protect them or to redress their situation,
True.
Then we can start hearing their voices. But as long as, most times when banks go to these rural areas, I've done a project like that before, and when we go to those rural areas, we just set up a temporary place where these people come in and do all those banking stuff, especially with all this online banking now. Yeah. So once you onboard them onto a phone system, that's the last contact you have with them.
True.
So if they have any issues, we say call, or we say travel to the next town or the next city, which is also very cumbersome.
Yeah.
They cost them money. So when they look at the opportunity cost of having to follow down a redress process that eventually does not even give them any redress,
True.
They are discouraged. So to hear their voices, the system needs to put structures that shows that we know you are here, we are aware that you could run into these problems, and we have taken care of how to look after you. I've had experiences with banking outside Nigeria. If there's a fraud on my account, I used to have an account in the US. If there's a fraud on my account in the US, I just call them, tell them I didn't transact this business. They call me and ask me, do you have your card? I say yes. Then they'll say, we'll cancel that card. And they cancel the card. And in 24, 48 hours, they return my money.
So, you see, this issue you just painted now, is expected that the financial service provider look after the customers, yes, right? Have maintained that relationship. But we now have regulation. So perhaps you can hypothesize that the regulators thought at a point that the providers could fail. So we put up guidelines, frameworks, and policies that should be enforced, right? You also talked about systemic, issues. I want you specifically to what those mechanisms should be, right? That could be set up. So from the provider side, you said there needs to be this maintenance of relationship going forward. Don't open an account and stop the relationship there and just make it transactional, right? What would you say the regulators should do as part of the measures, apart from putting regulations and policies out there and frameworks? What should be the role of the regulator in ensuring that these people that are vulnerable, their voices are heard, their grievances are redressed?
One of the problems that we have in consumer protection in Nigeria, which I've been talking about for the past 20 years, is the dual role that we make regulators play, whereby they're regulators of the service providers in that sector, and they are also responsible for consumer protection.
Okay.
There is conflict of interest. Usually, there's always conflict of interest.
What might that be?
The conflict of interest being that it is in the interest of the regulator that the service provider is profitable, that the service provider continues to do business, because that's how the GDP is measured, and that's what benefits the government in power. Okay? So it tilts more towards supporting and encouraging and protecting the service provider than it tilts towards the consumer, which is the reason why we pushed until we got a consumer agency set up, which is the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection, that is solely his own primary responsibility is to look out for consumers in every sector. But the sector regulator still has responsibilities in that sector. So I said all of that to say this. As long as the sector regulator does not change perception that my primary concern here should be the consumer, because as long as the consumer is happy, the consumer is content and is enjoying good services, this industry or this sector will continue to grow. Because if the consumer is not spending, the service provider will not have anything. There's nobody to serve.
Yeah.
So we still are doing that shift in our mindset as a country. So what do service regulators need to do? Regulators need to prioritize the consumer experience in every sector, financial sector especially. The regulator needs to understand that if they do not invest in building the kind of trust and confidence that the average Nigerian consumer will have in the financial sector, they will keep struggling to hit financial inclusion numbers. They will keep struggling to grow that sector. And you will keep having more informal financial transactions than you would the formal one, which they need to be able to be in control of the whole economy.
Yeah.
So the sector regulator is the one who, don't forget that the service provider is in it to make profit.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why we have consumer protection is because we understand that in a capitalist environment, the business owner, his business in that sector is just to make money. And he doesn't mind if he cuts corners or if he bends or if he oppresses somebody, as long as he's making money. It is the sector regulator who says, no, you cannot make money in any other way except it's ethical and it is guided.
Sure.
So it is the sector regulator who needs to put the regulation in place to insist that as a service provider, if you open an account for somebody in another place, you must have a minimum number of maybe access points for them to come back if they have any issues. You must be able to put structures in place that protects the consumer. One thing I've been asking for a long time, I've been asking for it, and I don't know if maybe this conversation will bring it up again. Why do we not have fraud insurance in the Nigerian banking sector?
So before you continue, maybe I should play the devil's advocate here. So who pays that premium?
The bottom line is it's the service provider. It's the consumer who pays the premium. But because it is across every account,
okay,
it will be a fraction. They're already taking all kinds of money from our accounts anyway, which we don't benefit from. So if they could say every account will pay 10 naira every month towards this fraud insurance, okay, I won't feel it, because they're taking more than that from my accounts anyway. And the last time I checked, there were over 90 million accounts opened in the Nigerian banking sector. That was like 3 or 4 years ago when I checked. So I don't know what it is now with financial inclusion and all this online banking and fintech. It would have grown.
Yeah.
So imagine if 10 naira is taken from every account every month and warehoused in a financial fraud insurance pool, okay, which guarantees me, which is what is available globally, which is the reason why my bank abroad, if I just call them, my card has been compromised. They don't abuse me. They don't tell me I'm the one who compromised it. They just cut off the card and refund the money because they know there's a fallback.
Then they do investigation.
They would investigate and all that. But they know there's a fallback. Well, what that has done is that because they do not put me under the pressure that we put our consumers here on to say, go and find out, are you the one? Where did you put your card? Is it somebody? We don't put me through all of that. If they find that I encourage the fraud, I will be prosecuted.
Yeah.
But that will be after they've done their findings.
True.
It's not before. What they do is instantly they refund your money. So I have confidence in that system. I am not afraid to transact business in that system. And I will put whatever money I have in that system. So if the Nigerian sector regulator, who's the CBN, is really concerned about building this trust and closing this gap that we're talking about, this financial inclusion gap, they need to start looking at creative and effective
and innovative ways.
Yes, innovative ways to help to rebuild that confidence in. So if, for instance, now a whole lot of people are sitting on their homes and the next thing they see, their money is just going out like it's a whatever thing. If I know that there's such a protection that I have, I will not panic. People have died just out of the trauma of seeing their funds going out and they cannot reach the bank to stop it. And then the bank says, it was your fault. It's always your fault. It's always the consumer's fault. The bank has never once admitted that, this might be a porous issue from until you prove it to them or you push them too hard. How many Nigerians have that confidence to be able to push and insist that this is not my fault? Once they start blaming them, I know the number of people. We used to hold a forum back in 2018 or 19, I can't remember, the Lagos Consumer Forum. We used to hold that forum at LTV. And anytime we do a forum on consumer protection and on banking sector, the whole hall is full of women and men who have been hit by fraud. They are rolling on the floor. They are crying. And I don't have anything to do to help them. This is where we lost the confidence. Because when people started saying, I can do internet banking and cards, everybody was excited.
Yeah.
But we lost the confidence of the consumer at that point when those frauds started to happen and the bank will not own responsibility. Yeah. They will not accept responsibility for it. So we built our internet banking on the sweat and the pain of a whole lot of consumers who lost
a lot of money.
Billions of money.
Okay, so when you talked about fraud insurance, right, two things came to my mind. Number one is the Nigerian consumer, I think, is already overcharged. So taking another 5 naira from him on a monthly basis or per transaction may also raise an eyebrow.
If he is the beneficiary, he is going to be a likely beneficiary of that 10 naira. I'm saying to you, every day you check your bank, if 5 naira has gone, 20 naira has gone, 15 naira has gone, you don't know what it is. You are not benefiting from it. If somebody is taking the money and you don't know for what. But if this one is to protect you, to say that in case there's a fraud on your account, we will be able to cover it. Do you understand?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is going to complain if it is not any significant amount. They are charging us 50 naira, what we call the stamp duty, just for transacting business, which doesn't come to us.
But that does not go to the bank too, right?
Wherever it goes, the bottom line is somebody's taking that 50 naira from you every time you transact business on an internet platform.
Okay.
So have I died because of that? I'm still running a business. So if you say you're going to take 10 naira now and put it in a fund that could protect me just in case I end up being a victim of fraud, why would that be a problem with the average consumer?
So another approach could also be that from the existing pool they already collect, a certain percentage can be taken from the charges that's already deducted and dedicated to that insurance, fraud insurance, right?
You know why that will not work?
Okay.
It will not work because, like I told you, if you're going to do consumer protection, you have to be very pragmatic about it.
Okay.
The banks are in this to make money. Do you understand? If I was going to be advising the central bank, I would say, first let the consumer start to pay, maybe within the next 5 years. When everybody's calm, when the trust is back and all that, you can now say, okay, service provider, you're also benefiting from this because now you don't have too much fraud on your system and quanko. So you should also be bearing part of the cost. But right now, they are not bearing any cost. It is the consumer who's bearing all the cost of fraud.
So just to let's address 3 issues before we round up. First and foremost, and we'll take them in that sequence. There are lots of financial service providers that have been hit with fines and sanctions, right? Some that are monetary, some are not monetary. Maybe they stop them from onboarding new customers, which ultimately results to loss of revenue anyway. So the FSP will tell you they are being hit by the hammer, a heavy one from the regulator, for every time they go and they violate something that, even though they think that it wasn't on their part. So there is that argument. That's number one. Number two, you talked about the fraud insurance. And I'm imagining, will fraudsters not also then capitalize? I say, yeah.
That's a very interesting question,
yeah.
actually. But you see, the bottom line of the matter is, fraud insurance it also gives birth to another line of service, and that is private investigation.
Okay.
Yeah. So if there is fraud insurance, there should be private investigators. There should be people who you would pass on that fraud case to, who would take time to forensically trace it and come back to you to say, this is where the fraud happened and all that. Then that piggybacks on enforcement. That is, there must be structures within the police system that once you are able to prove that fraud, that whoever it is that is responsible for it, whether it is the card owner or some willy-nilly fraudster, once you are able to track it to them, you must be able to pick them up and punish them. In Nigeria, the reason why fraud and lawlessness is so rife is because there is little punishment for bad behavior. So people know they can get away with stuff, and that's why they keep doing it. But if they know that if you take this person's money, they are going to get you. And when they get you, you are going to do the time. It starts to check how many people want to go and be tracking that. So that is not a problem at all. In fact, it creates more jobs, because now people will now become private investigators. And we also now have to beef up the police to be able to say, when this happens, this is the next thing. And then the court system also. There must be a whole ecosystem that follows with that thing. But what it does is that, what's the percentage of fraud? You say it's about 30%, 40%.
Yeah. Imagine
if we're able to reduce consumer confidence or increase consumer confidence by that 20 or 30%. You know the impact that would have on the ecosystem, of the financial sector. So you weigh these things.
Two questions. So you talked about this fraud insurance, the private investigation, the sanctions, and all of those things, right? And the first question that comes to mind is, do we need a new regulation, or this can be contained within existing regulation?
All the regulation, both our own FCCPC and BOFEA and all the sector regulators already have been empowered to do everything they can to protect the consumer.
Okay.
Based on those regulations or those laws,
those acts,
those legislation, they are empowered to make regulations that would help them to fulfill those acts.
Those acts.
So they don't need to go to the National Assembly to get that. A sector regulator can come up with a regulation which will be gazetted, and it becomes the law of the land.
Great.
So it's not rocket science.
All right. So we are saying here that if we're to protect the invisible victims and vulnerable segments, the regulators need to do certain things, and those are the things you've been saying.
Yeah.
A fraud is committed, for instance, right? And you report. Let's say you successfully reported. The banks place a no debit, on their account. That should elapse after 24 hours, or is it 24, 48 hours about so? So you cannot put a sanction on that account until you get, a court injunction, right, to perpetually freeze that account. I'm coming, man. Now, and to get court injunctions, right, I'm asking this because you also serve on the tribunal, right? You handled cases too.
Yeah.
To get court injunctions, I don't know how long it takes, but I am told that it could take up to a week, right? Or more. Now, if you've lifted after 24 hours, you've lifted that sanction and there is no court injunction, there is a window for the fraudster, the suspect, to have moved funds around and all of that, which makes tracing that fund, and recovering it a bit harder, right? Is there something we need to do? Do we need to engage the judiciary, right? Or even the legislature to say, look, this 24 hours window to put a no debit, on an account is too short. That's on one side of the conversation. On the other side, this suspect may have been wrongfully accused. So if you then increase it to say, let's even say a month or a week, and the funds are frozen, you are denying this person of service and value. When in all honesty, this person is not guilty of the suspected, fraud also. How do we navigate these murky waters?
Like I said, the consumer has been very invisible within the Nigerian ecosystem. We don't do laws that are based on satisfying consumers. We do laws to mitigate against something that just happened right now. So we have all this start and stop, fire brigade kind of attitude to it. We need a holistic look to say who is at the center of service in governance. It is the consumer. How do we serve this consumer better? If we start from that point, a whole lot of the laws that we have in place that are all topsy-turvy will be cleared and they will be streamlined. So that is, look at the process you just described. If all that was stolen from me was 20,000 naira, I'll go through all of this to get 20,000 naira back. I'll just walk away from it, which is the reason why I'm invisible. Yeah. Because the process is too tedious for me. The process is not made to give me comfort. This is what we're saying. If, for instance, we take the innovation of a financial fraud insurance. Okay. That insurance is now the bank who is doing the service of checking that account that is receiving the money and the bottom line is the bank has already refunded the money to the owner. So they will now, that's already cleared the trust quotient. But they now have the job to sit down and watch that account and follow it and do all those things. And it doesn't have to be 24 hours. It doesn't have to involve me. You see, the fact that you involve me in the process of trying to get permission for you to check
whether
this is a fraudulent transaction or not. That's where you lose me as a consumer. I don't have to be involved in that process. You will do that process. You and all the regulators and the enforcement will do that process. But you have removed me totally. You have already protected me. I have reported this thing. You have seen that it actually happened. You've refunded my money. Now, what you do to get hold of that person, to retrieve the money and all that is now the responsibility of back-end service providing. It is not front-end, you consumer go and bring whatever and quanko. So it's who is more important. That's what we need to first start with. The bank doesn't want to accept responsibility. That's why they push it back to you. And that's why you have to now go and engage the courts. And they can do all of that once they have tracked that account and seen that, there's a pattern here. Okay? And so based on that, they can go after the courts, they can go after the police, they can do all those things. They can do it. It's right. The information is right there in front of them. True. But nobody's making them do it because the law already puts the onus of proof on the consumer. That law has changed, by the way. Okay. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection, I think it's section 145. I can't remember the section now.
Just before you continue. So, while FCCPC oversees a lot of things, there is also the BOFIA, right? Which then empowers CBN. I think it's section 35 or 65, I'm not sure about one of them, that anything that has to do with financial services still resides within CBN. So, FCCPC jurisdiction, to an extent is then limited, right, when it comes to financial services.
That was, there's always sector regulator.
Yes, there is a coordinating committee.
No, they have a rivalry that they are constantly fighting over.
These overlaps and jurisdiction and all of that.
But the FCCPA states clearly that when it concerns consumer protection in Nigeria, this
irrespective of sector,
this law supersedes every other sector when it concerns consumer protection. But it also now empowers the FCCPC to work in conjunction with. It didn't take away the
the mandate and responsibility of
CBN. Yeah. No, it says you should work in collaboration. You should have an MOU by which you can work together.
Yeah.
But our law supersedes every other law when it comes to consumer protection and competition in Nigeria. That's what still, in fact, a court just upheld that argument. Yes, recently.
Okay.
So it's just sectors.
Let's wrap up here. Backstage, you mentioned something around ombudsman, right? And all of these things, if we say them without the regulator taking actions, right, or making pronouncement, they won't fly, because I think the FSP will think they have their hands full already. They are doing a lot, right? So in closing, what's beyond the fraud insurance, right? The awareness, the mechanisms for redress, that the regulator needs to be more proactive, right? And not be more consumer oriented. That what would be the role of the ombudsman? That's number one. In closing, number two would then be, what else must the regulator do to ensure that these segments that are vulnerable, are protected and are not denied active participation within the financial service ecosystem?
Okay, the role of the ombudsman, my thought around a financial ombudsman is not so much as a regulator initiative,
okay.
But more as a service provider initiative.
Wouldn't that be optional?
No, you see, that's the point. If we are in a competitive environment, This is another problem. The banking sector is not competitive in Nigeria. If we're in a competitive environment, I will be looking for things I can do that would make me more attractive to my customers.
True.
So having putting a consumer ombudsman structure within my service in such a way that the consumer knows that I am aware of him, I see him, and I know that sometimes the system might fail. So I have already created a platform that can actually even check me in the process. So that ombudsman must be independent, even though it's funded by me. I will create an independent office and say, you can, if you're not satisfied with the way we have resolved your issues, you can take it to the ombudsman. And whatever decision the ombudsman takes, we will abide by it. And the ombudsman is not under any pressure from you. If you put that kind of structure in your place, I will walk to that bank and open an account because I feel protected.
True.
Okay, so that is doesn't even require regulation. It is a service. It is the quality of service and how service oriented and how consumer centric you are.
True.
As a service provider that would help you put structures in place. Yeah. Incidentally, I found out that some banks have very quietly created a consumer protection desk separate from their service provider, their service desk. They've created a consumer protection desk after a judgment that was given at the tribunal that fined a bank 120 million for not providing service. They quietly created a consumer protection desk and started training staff to understand the consumer protection laws and advise the bank on how not to violate it.
True.
But they are doing it underground. They don't want anybody to know because that may show some weakness or whatever. So we need more service providers to be more service-oriented and more consumer-centric. Now, as for the service, the regulators. The regulator needs, like I said, needs to see the consumer more. If they see the consumer more, they put structures in place that actually is more consumer-friendly, that would ensure that service providers are not taking advantage of consumers.
Sure. Then
all the time that they fine them, you talked about those fines.
Yeah.
Those fines make me laugh because the average consumer, you know what they feel? They don't care about the fine. They say, they fine them. Did they give me the money? Where's the money that they find them going to? So in the end, even though they are fining them to keep the system clean, it is not...
the value is not...
The value is, yes.
Flowing to the...
The consumer doesn't see the value. And so it is not impacting on that consumer's sense of protection.
True.
Because he's not seeing the value. If, for instance, you tell me this bank has been charging people or done something against consumers, and the punishment is go and refund everything you have taken from every one of those consumers, the consumer feels the impact of that one.
True.
And so the consumer knows, there's CBN there protecting me. Because if they take my money anyhow, CBN will order them to give me back. But CBN doesn't order them to give me back. CBN fines them and keeps the money. So how does the consumer feel protected that way? So we need the service provider to see the consumer more. Some of these punitive measures against which they are trying to say we're doing on behalf of the consumer, make them refund things that they've done to consumers. True. Make them put back. That's when you start building that confidence that there's somebody there's a big brother who is overlooking this system. And if these people drop the ball, this big brother will come in and will take care of me.
Absolutely.
That's what the consumer is looking for.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an interesting conversation with Mrs. Sola Salako-Ajulo, right? Yeah. I forgot to say, she is the president of Consumer Advocacy Foundation of Nigeria, and she's been on this journey for over 20 years. We are glad to have you. You've said a lot, and I know the regulators are listening. They have their hands full. I believe that together, if we keep doing this and everyone plays their part, we'll have a better ecosystem. Thank you once more again for coming. It's always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Hope to have you again on the...
Thank you very much, and I want to also thank EFINA. EFINA gave me my first Consumer Champion Award.
Awesome.
And I've always appreciated and cherished that award because it's a major recognition I've gotten for the work I've done in this sector.
Thank you.
And thank you for all that you do to keep the financial sector honest and consumer friendly.
The pleasure is ours.
Thank you very much. It's an great honor to be here. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we look forward to another episode which should come your way very soon. Stay tuned. And bye for now.
The EFINA Podcast.